Morgan and her wife did not have a smooth and straightforward pathway to creating their family. There were obstacles that they had to figure out how to navigate, and it took them several tries with a variety of different organizations before they got the kinds of answers that they wished someone had given them right from the very beginning. There are so many things filling this conversation today. I know you're going to learn a ton. Welcome to the Becoming Baby Ready podcast, your podcast for queer family planning. My name is Sam, and throughout this podcast, you'll hear me have conversations with professionals who work alongside people who want to start and grow their families, as well as parents of intentionally created families. Everyone I speak to identifies as being part of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community. This is your opportunity to learn answers to questions you didn't even know you had. Welcome, everyone. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing you to and speaking with Morgan. And Morgan is on the West Coast. Is that correct?
Yeah,
It's early morning for you over there.
yeah, it's 8 o'clock. It's not too early. I've already been up for a bit. Yeah, I'm in Bellingham, Washington.
Oh,
So just
okay.
below BC. Yeah, we go to
Yeah.
Vancouver a bit. Yeah.
Oh, do you? Yes, I had a friend that grew up in that area. It's apparently very
Mhm.
beautiful. I haven't been out that direction in many, many years, but yeah, it is
Yeah.
beautiful out there. Well,
It is.
welcome. I'm going to
Thanks.
ask you to start by just telling us who you are and about the members of your family.
Yeah, my name is Morgan Henry Kerr. I'm in Bellingham, Washington, and I am a queer TTC support coach, TTC doula. I am the non-gestational parent in my families, and there's myself, my wife, and our 3-year-old daughter.
Excellent. Perfect. How long have you been working in the TTC world? And for those who are listening who aren't familiar, TTC is trying to conceive.
Right.
And if you are still in the information gathering phase of your family creation journey, you may not have got to the trying to conceive part and may not know that acronym. So now you do. But how long, Morgan, have you been
Yeah.
working in that capacity?
Yeah, I've been doing this for a little over a year now. And yeah, there are a million acronyms. And that's one thing I also kind of navigate the new language that you sort of have to learn when navigating the world of fertility and trying to get pregnant. So yeah, so it's been a little over a year now that I've been sort of building these offerings and building like what my role is in this space.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's been really exciting and I feel really good about it.
Yeah, as you should, as you should.
Mhm.
It's well needed, well necessary. There's, as you say, there's a lot of acronyms. There's a lot of things that come up that people just aren't familiar with,
Sure.
as they're on their journey, as they're planning their journey. So to have somebody to sort of just even answer questions or bounce ideas off of, because when you get
Mhm.
1,000 different thoughts thrown at you, you need somewhere to kind of go to disseminate all that information, decide what the best course of action is, right?
Right.
Um, so there's you, your wife, and your 3-year-old. That's awesome.
Mhm.
Just a
Yeah.
great age too, right?
Yeah.
Really coming into
Yeah.
herself.
She absolutely, I mean, even from like a baby, from a young, like 1, 2, like she's always been very self-actualized and very smart. Yeah, she's a trip for sure. I say that I'm now in my perimenopause and preschool era because it's like very true. And the combination of those two roles is like pretty intense. But yeah, I wouldn't have it any other way. Yeah.
I totally understand that. Tell me about the family creation pathway for you. So you and your wife, I mean, if you are a TTC support person and doula, then my guess is that there's something behind all of that. Most of us don't
Yes.
become doulas unless we've had a reason to want to walk that path. So how did things unfold for you? You decided you wanted to have a baby. Is that something that
Hmm.
you always knew, and then that the two of you always planned to do from the beginning?
Yeah, I mean, and I always knew I was that person that like was always been sort of maternal. I was always the one packing around my neighbor kids and my cousins and had to list the baby names when I was like 12, 13, 14 years old. You know what I mean? I've always sort of been like that. And so yeah, very early days in our relationship, we knew we were going to have a family. And would sit at like, out on a date at a bar, like writing baby names on coasters or whatever. Um, and yeah, so when we started, we planned because my wife is like 5 years younger than me. And so we thought, well, yeah, based on age, you should go ahead and get pregnant first. And then the more and more I thought about it, I was like, oh, but I really actually want to try this. I want to have this experience of being pregnant if I can. And so, yeah, so we kind of went for it, and I went ahead and tried to get pregnant first. We thought we probably would have more than one, so I would maybe carry one, she would carry one, but like, come to find out, like the whole plan just like got blown out of the water for sure.
Right.
Um, but yeah, so like I'm definitely, yeah, so like a bit more of a context, I guess, in terms of like my overall positioning here is that my background is actually in like community building, event planning, like delight and surprise placemaking, tending to folks in groups. A lot of like, I'm a curator of delight and surprise, alchemist, creative alchemist. And so I've been taken that professional background and I've combined it with my own lived experience
Hmm.
of trying to conceive myself unsuccessfully, 14 IUIs, 16 total between my wife and I, on
Wow.
a path of 2.5 years of trying to conceive overall with, some cycles off and mishaps and breaks and whatever. And so I have a lot of insight to share from my own lived experience. And I also have a big passion for being able to like hold space, support, celebrate, honor folks who are on this path because I think that like whether you're queer or not, like there's a lot of celebration and attention for folks when they get pregnant or when they have their babies. But for us, when we're talking about months and years of trying to conceive,
Hmm.
there first of all just isn't enough support and resources for queer folks trying to conceive like at all still.
Right.
And also like there's not enough at all like actual celebration tending to bolstering witnessing walking alongside queer folks while they're trying to conceive, which I think in some ways it's like it's an opportunity for folks to like not only maybe like you know unpack things because medical trauma comes into this process with us, like our daily life comes into this process with us. Being a queer person in the world is very has always been tricky in terms of like navigating society, and now it feels extra hard.
Hmm.
And there's just as like an opportunity to like really go, this is a massive deal. It's a massive deal to decide you want to be a parent.
Yeah.
And it's a massive deal to be on that path for an undetermined amount of time,
Right.
putting everything you have, literal blood, sweat, and tears into this journey of making this happen and actualizing yourself as a parent. And it can feel like a huge uphill battle sometimes and a huge grind. It's very arduous and stressful and infuriating and exhausting and amazing and beautiful and like all of the things. But it like there's just so much more that can be done to support queer folks during that specific phase of time. And because I have the insights from my own lived experience of like some of the obstacles we face specifically because we're queer, and because of my passion and background in like that delight surprise, that tending to like what I'm helping people do is like build their root cellar of like support and tools and like real healing.
Hmm.
I'm combining these two things into what I now offer, and can offer folks like in a really real way. So to answer your question, but with more context, like that's
Yeah.
kind of where that all came to be. Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. So tell me about your journey. You tried unsuccessfully to get pregnant yourself,
Yep.
and and then I mean, then there's a grieving period too that we need to
Yeah.
go through when we think that we're going to be parents by using our own uterus, and then that's
Yeah.
not a not an option for us. How did you
Right.
come to that?
Well, the thing is that like you're grieving, like a lot of this process is repetitive grief, right?
Hmm.
And I have a unique story because I did try to conceive first and then stopped and then we switched to my wife and then, I went through the second parent adoption process. So like really we're talking about like so much grief.
Hmm.
And and it wasn't just the grief of me having to like pivot and now not be the bio parent. It's like grief every time you have a cycle that you're not pregnant.
Yeah.
And that like that the coming off of a 2 week wait, which is that period between when you've done an insemination and when you find out if you're pregnant or you menstruate again. That moment when you see that, your temperature has not gone up, or you actually start bleeding, or you have a note not pregnant or whatever. It's like grief over and over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it creates in some ways a level of like a like a deep mourning and a deep like feeling of lack of worth, but it also was just like, yeah, that's it's tremendous, and it's like over and over again because you put everything into it. Um, so yeah, I mean, we started when I was 37. And for us, the other pieces of grief are just like how do okay, so we want to get pregnant, like now what?
Right.
What do we even do? What is our actual first step?
Hmm.
Who can help us? What is that person going to do? Like, what is an IUI? How does it work? Where do we go? Like, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? Just, and so then we're just like, searching YouTube for like the two lesbian couples who had vlogged their journey that we're trying to suss out information from. And so it was like a lot of just like doom scrolling Google, like late
Mhm.
nights trying to figure out how to get an
Yeah.
IUI administered. And so it's just like a lot of like just sort of piecemealing research together, trying to figure it out because there just was no
Yeah.
sense of guidance.
Yeah.
And so we started with a registered nurse here in town that a friend of ours had seen because to help kind of regulate her menstrual cycle, and found that she in fact administers an IUI. So we're like, cool, we'll start there. We didn't feel like felt so incredibly daunting just to go from zero to IVF. And
Right.
so we're like, well, it doesn't seem like there's anything wrong with me. I'm not infertile. There's nothing going on there. Let's just start here and just kind of see what happens. Um, and so, yeah, so long story short, we did, because I did natural IUIs, she did two IUIs in that ovulation window
Okay.
because they weren't medicated. So that's why there was so many actual IUIs, because
Right.
the first 6 rounds were doubles. Um, and so, yeah, so we started with her. She came to our house. Thought that'd be really sweet. Let's do it at home, blah, 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 blah. I've been menstruating since I was 11, and my whole life been super regular. And then this moment where I'm trying to ovulate and make a person, nope.
Oh,
We had picked up the sperm from Seattle Sperm Bank on our way to Portland Pride. Like we had it like buckled in the back seat, the box, and then took it, it's in the Airbnb with us and everything. Took it home, which I suggest like no one actually do that. Just ship it to wherever, or put a blanket over it, put it in the closet or something, because it just feels like it's staring you down the whole time.
yep.
Because it expires, it doesn't last forever, and so it did expire. Like I ovulated late, so we had to drive it back to Seattle, put it back in storage, and wait till the next cycle. So yeah, we did one cycle, two IUIs with her. Then she decided she didn't want to do IUIs anymore. So then she referred us to a naturopathic doctor midwife. She did 5 rounds that were doubles, still wasn't pregnant. Did an HSG, which is like a dye they put in your fallopian tube to see if you have
Hmm.
a block. No block. Then we went to the only fertility clinic in Bellingham, which we were trying to avoid him the whole time because he is known for being very heteronormative, very not inclusive. And it's partly why we went to these two other options first. It's because we were trying to avoid
Sure.
actual fertility clinic that was our option. So we went to him, like, explain to us how this works, like on a yellow legal pad with a pencil, just like very old school. And I did 2 medicated rounds with him, and still wasn't pregnant. And then, so now our only other option was to go to Seattle, which is an hour and a half south of us. Which is Seattle Reproductive Medicine. Did a bunch of tests there, and not to mention, I didn't mention that initially I had to track my ovulation for 6 months before we even did that first IUI. So every single day, I checked my basal body temperature in the morning, every single day for
Yeah.
6 months to look at my ovulation. So we ended up going to Seattle and did a bunch of tests. And at that point, after doing 14 unsuccessful IUIs, tested my AMH, which is like a test that tells you what your like ovarian reserve is.
Mhm.
And mine was so low that the doctor was like, you should have never started this process in the first place. No one, I didn't even know what those 3 letters meant until that moment.
Mhm.
And she said, we could do IVF, but you're going to hate your life. And I don't feel super confident that that's even going to get you pregnant. So
Yeah.
essentially, the end of your road is here. And that was in October of 2020. Like even now, like several years later, I can like see, I could feel the like at the bench that I was sitting on under my butt. I can like feel the light from our living room. I can see my computer. I can see the whole scene in
Yeah.
that moment. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Even now.
Yeah.
And she's like, I'm sorry, Morgan, like the end of your road is here. And I think I blacked out.
Yeah.
I think I like went into shock because not only was like that, obviously that process was a lot, you know, being told at that fertility clinic with the male doctor of like making a consultation appointment and them going, oh yeah, we work with people like you. Like,
Excellent. Thank you.
yeah, I would assume so. That's your business of getting people pregnant, right?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so we switched gears really quickly, more quickly than we had planned. My wife got all the tests too, and then in February of 2021, she happened to ovulate twice in that month, and got pregnant on the second medicated IUI. It was still during COVID, so I couldn't be in the room for either of them. So I was like either in the parking garage on FaceTime or pacing up and down the street outside the clinic.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then she had our daughter in November of 2021. So that was a whole hell of a journey for sure. And I think that most people just think, I want to get pregnant, so I'm going to get pregnant. Like,
Right.
how hard could this be? And then they get 6, 8 IUIs in, and then burnout sets in, and
Yeah.
isolation sets in. And like, why isn't anyone supporting us setting in? And why is this so hard is setting in? And that's the point where like that type of feeling is like the root of why part of why I created what I've created is to be able to scoop people up in that moment and tend to them in the way that they deserve.
Hmm.
So I have a
Yeah.
lot of insights to share from my own experience. So I'm
Yeah.
doing that now.
Yeah. And and certainly your story is not unique, unfortunately. And I don't think it's exclusive to the queer community either. I think that you're right. I think anyone with a uterus who thinks that they want to have a baby sort of says, "Well, I've got the parts, so I've
Yeah.
never been told that they're not functioning. My cycles are regular. I bleed
Yeah.
for XYZ days. I have white flow days. I have red flow days. It's all stereotypically normal, and
Hmm.
then we find out that there's an obstacle in our way. um,
Yeah.
is is part of the work that you do then recommending that people do sort of AMH testing and HSG testing like right from the very beginning, as soon as you can have that done, know what your possibilities are ahead of time? Like, I mean, there's
Yeah.
if your AMH levels are super low, there's no point in trying everything else.
Yeah. And certainly not unmedicated IUIs.
Right.
Or, you know, a lot of people are going for just ICIs or IVIs at home because they have a known donor who's like, and that's easier and it's really cheap and like, or free. And so I think a lot of folks are opting for these like lesser invasive options,
Hmm.
and are certainly having success with it. But yeah, that is the one thing. That's the one thing I always say first is like, I can literally save you 20 grand potentially if you get your AMH tested first.
Yeah.
Like, and like I said, like I literally didn't even hear those 3 letters until I done 14 unsuccessful IUIs. So that one thing could have made a massive difference in the whole process.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so that is definitely one thing. The HSG part, I think, like came later because we're like, okay, what is going on here? If like, what is there? Is that the actual issue? And so
Right.
that it seemed like the timing of that came at a time in which seemed appropriate because I didn't have endometriosis. I don't have any other like
Right.
issues. Like, so there was no reason to look at
Mhm.
doing HSG until we got to that point of like, let's rule it out if
Right.
that's the thing. And it wasn't. It was totally fine. But like, you know, even then, that's the doctor I was trying to avoid is the only one who administers an HSG. And while I'm laying there with a speculum, and he kept joking about it. Like, don't worry, it's just a speculum. It's not a torture device. And he said it like 3 times. And I was like, wow, 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 wow,
Mhm.
wow, wow. Like that's insane to hear that right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, but yes. So yes, the AMH is for sure something. I'm like, first off, let's have you had your AMH. And I think in some cases people are like, yeah, like they totally did that first.
Hmm.
And some cases they're like, oh, they're writing it down like AMH. Okay, get that tested, you know?
Hmm.
So it just depends on where you live, kind of it
Yeah.
determines like what treatment you're getting.
Yeah. And to be fair, some of the queer community and people who are solo parents by choice, because all of us are missing a piece, typically speaking,
Mhm. Right, right, right.
of the journey, then we need some guidance, some support, and some gametes. They're
Hmm.
dealing with people. Their job is to help people who have been unsuccessful. So they should be, the minute you walk in the door, that should be their sort of their expectation that we're going to need to check all these boxes kind of thing. And so
Right.
if you
Yeah.
walk into his office and he's doing HSG before he's doing AMH, then he's missed a step.
Right. Well, and like the registered nurse, the naturopathic doctor, midwife, and the fertility doctor never
Hmm.
said AMH. It
Yeah.
wasn't until the second fertility doctor,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
fourth stop, that
Yeah.
I even heard AMH. So, and the thing is that like when you're at the start of your journey, if you don't know what your options are, you don't have options,
Sure.
right? If you don't know what to ask, you're not going to ask.
Of course.
And so I think a lot of folks just like they go it like maybe they've done some research, but they're more so going to lean on whatever the doctor tells them to do,
Hmm.
which is like legit, of course. But like if you don't have a sense of like act of agency or information
Yeah.
to know for yourself how to navigate, what to ask, how it works, then you end up going along with something that maybe later you just like, man, I just did not feel good about that,
Yeah.
making that decision. I was kind of told to do that. Or yeah, or you don't know what the questions even to ask. Like you
Yeah.
don't know that you've missed something, that you've
Yep.
missed a step because you didn't even know how to ask it.
Yeah.
And that's fair. I mean, that's just the reality of this. This is like a completely foreign territory that if you haven't navigated before, you would have no, of course, you'd have no idea how to.
Right.
So that makes sense, but it's unfortunate for sure because queer folks should be completely well resourced when navigating this process.
Right. But at the same time, it should start with our family docs. If we've got a decent family doc and you go in and say, you know what, we're thinking about, because many people do go in and see their family doc and say, can I just get routine blood
Mhm.
work? I just want to know I'm healthy because we're thinking about trying to start a family. Perfect. If
Yeah,
that's what you're trying to do, then let's make sure that you know what you should be asking. Like,
right.
why is it not just routine across the board? These are the kinds of things
Sure.
you're going to want to know.
Right. That's a great question. Why isn't that the case? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I went to my primary care, which I just picked one so that I have one for, sort of emergencies or PAPs and stuff, that kind of thing. And yeah, we did the like sort of hormone panel at that time because I was a little bit older. And in fact, that's when I found out that I was CMV positive, which is like like a strain of herpes that most of us have and don't realize. And I didn't know. And
Hmm.
apparently my mom's also positive. I probably got it during like when I was born.
Yeah.
But we had to switch donors again because the our primary like number one pick was also positive. And so yeah, so we had to like pick three different donors during that time too because of different like um markers that came up that wouldn't have been ideal and could have increased the possibility of like developmental stuff in our kid and then the CMV positive stuff. And so,
Right.
but yeah, that didn't come up with her either. So I guess the fifth stop is when I found out
Yeah,
what
yeah,
it
yeah, right. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to add another one stop to your list, but
is.
but
That's
they're
okay.
educated, so they should at least give you a fundamentally foundational piece. Hold on for just a moment. We'll be right back. You know about Baby Ready because you're listening to this podcast, so you know that we are all about queer family planning and helping you have the family of your dreams. But did you know that we don't abandon you once your baby arrives? We actually offer parenting coaching as well, and that's not just for the newborn phase, although we are there for that, but it's through toddlerhood and young children, tweens, and even through the teen years. When you need someone unbiased to lend an ear so that they can hear where your struggles truly are and help you come up with a path and a plan that feels truly right for you and your individual family, don't hesitate to reach out. We are always happy to be there for you. Visit us at www.babyready.info for more information. You talked about using donors, and donors are
Yeah.
not inexpensive. How did you
No.
how did you go about that? Did you know always that you wanted to use a donor because you didn't want to ask someone you knew, or did you not have someone that you knew that you could ask?
Yeah, we just didn't have any. I mean, we kind of did that moment, had that moment of like, do we know anybody? Could we
Right.
know somebody? Do we know someone who knows someone who could be that person? And so we
Yeah.
definitely had that like moment of like, again, like not knowing what we didn't know and sort of just like, like thinking about some potential ideas. But I think ultimately, once we found out like how the Seattle Sperm Bank operated and what that would mean for us, it just felt the most clear and like straightforward approach. And so we did go with them and, got paid the $50, got our catalog, looked through all the donors, which is a trip in itself. It's like a
Sure.
real trip. But I think that, yeah, I mean, yeah, at the time, the 0.5 milliliters of sperm that we bought was 680. Now it's almost $1,200
Yeah.
for like literally the same thing. And in all reality, so we did plan to have two. We had two vials in sibling storage until the end of where are we at now? 2023. And it was kind of coming up of like you need to renew your storage, and we're like a lot of things were happening, and our like kind of big stuff was happening with my wife's family and personal life stuff, and we're like we literally can't add trying to conceive on top of what was already happening. And also like, there's some questions of like, do we really want a second one? Like we were both birthing businesses. I'm 43, very much moving into my like crone era and like very much in perimenopause and like what do we want now in terms of our life moving forward and what we can give to Arlo. So we ended up get, selling them back essentially, but like you only get a certain, I don't remember what the percentage was. It wasn't 100, that's for sure,
Yeah.
percent back of a percentage of what you spent for them when you bought them,
Right.
not what they're worth now,
No, of
which
course
is
not.
insane because literally it didn't leave the building, it didn't even leave the box, it didn't leave the room. It's just gonna put it back in a different spot and then sell it to someone else for
Yeah.
1,200 bucks.
Or take your nameplate off the door and leave it exactly where it is, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. So that was less than ideal, pretty messed up actually. But
Hmm.
otherwise, they're always, good to work with. It just felt like we wanted something that was straightforward when everything else felt kind of piecemeal and kind of like mysterious and difficult and stressful. Having that was like, yeah, it was fine. And they have a good reputation. And it's the whole idea of like sperm donation is like wild.
Yes.
And it's a business, which is wild. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
When you made the shift, and you obviously can't speak for your wife since she's not here, but you made the
Hmm.
shift. Did you get the sense that she was excited about making that shift? Because you're both still on this path. You still want a
Yeah,
family. It hadn't been
yeah.
successful to that point, and so you look at each other and say, okay, should we change direction? Should we use the other uterus? Was that something that
Mhm.
she was excited to do, or was she reticent to use her uterus? She was happy to have you use yours.
No, I think because we already knew that at some point she would carry the second one or
Right.
try to carry a second one. That it was more just like, oh my God, I thought I had like 2 years and now I have like 2 months. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And not really that she had to have 2 months. We could have waited as long as we wanted to, but it felt like because we had gone through what we'd gone through it to this point,
Yeah.
that why would we stop and put a huge gap in there in the timeline now,
Right.
right? So it was just more of a matter of like, okay, get all the testing done. Like, she's got eggs for days, come to find out. So there was no problem there. And I think we just kind of got, yeah, through the holidays. And then, yeah, there was like kind of no reason to like not just pick up right there in February
Yeah.
and go for it. So I think it was more just like, oh my God, okay, like I'm like not mentally prepared, but it wasn't like I don't want to do this or I never wanted to. And that way our story is unique in that like that's definitely not true. I would venture to guess for most queer couples or maybe more of the majority of queer couples of like that they both don't want that experience. They never saw themselves being pregnant. It's like not what they want to do. It's like not what their gender expression tells them is aligned with them. It's not what they who they want to be. They are fine being the non-gestational parent. And for us, it just happens to be that we do have two uterus. We are like cis women. We both wanted to have a baby and be pregnant. So
Hmm.
we could make that shift to her going for it. It was just at a much earlier timeline.
Yeah. It is I mean it is a gift to have two for sure and have that
Yeah.
as being an option. How did
Yeah.
you navigate your own processing of not being biologically connected to your child when that
Yeah.
was something that you were thinking that you were going to have for so long? As you say, many are
Yes.
okay with that not being the case because they know from the outset they don't want to. But
Hmm.
how did you navigate that?
I mean, I certainly had moments where, and it's, yeah, earlier days when that shift happened, I definitely crossed my mind of like, will I feel like her nanny or her aunt or a friend? You know what I mean? Will I
Yeah.
actually feel like her actual mom?
Right. Yeah.
And the reality is that like when she was born, like our midwife was like, okay, Morgan, you're gonna catch her, you're gonna get her under the armpits and put her on Tasha's chest. And at that moment, she came out kind of stunned, so she had to go to the little warmer and kind of come come into the world
Yeah.
more slowly. And so I was the first one whose finger she held on to. When we were after labor recovering, like the nurses would call Tasha the refrigerator, and I was the couch because they'd walk in and like Arlo would be in my robe, or then you know what I mean. It never clicked into me that like I wasn't her mom.
Right.
Like it's just that never actualized. Like that fear never came to life. I never once felt like I wasn't her mom. And I feel like, yeah, even though she didn't come out of my body,
Hmm.
like she's been with me for like lifetimes before now, you know?
Yeah.
She's
Yeah.
my kid. She's my kid. And
Yeah.
it's like, um, her donor was 5'11". My wife is 5'3" and I'm 5'8", and I'm the shortest one on both sides of my family. They're all
Hmm.
giants. And so it's like just that I kind of joke that like she got her height from me, you know?
Yes.
Um, yeah. And there's definite things. I mean, my wife and I are very different creatures, and there's definite things that are so, and that's why my business is called I Am Mamo, because that's what Arlo calls me. That's my parent name is Mamo. So there's very much things that are so an Arlo and Mamo thing to do that are not Arlo and Baba things to do. And there's so Arlo and Baba things to do that are not something that she and I do together. So we have
Yeah.
like our own special bonds
Yeah.
with her separately as well. And so, yeah, so I've never had that feeling of like, oh, you're like, don't feel like mine because you didn't come out of my body. You know what I mean? She's
Yeah.
1000% my kid and double by law now. So
Yeah.
on paper, she's also double. It's just infuriating itself. Yeah. But yeah, she's mine for sure.
First of all, I'm sorry for making you emotional. Our
No,
children do that to us, right?
yes,
They just
of
do. They
course.
bring us to our knees. But I think that it's important for people to hear that yes, you navigated uncertainty at times, and then you met her, and it didn't matter
No,
anything other than the fact that she was your daughter. It didn't matter what
right.
her genetic line was. You are
Yeah.
her parent, and you are absolutely unequivocally 100% her parent.
Yeah.
And so, but you can't know that until you meet her. And
Hmm.
so you can hope that, you can expect that, but until you actually meet her, you
Hmm.
can't know that in your soul. But then the second you know it, you can't unknow it either, right?
Right.
And I think
Yeah.
that that's the piece that I'm hoping that people listening will get and give themselves grace for,
Yeah.
because if they're still in the planning phase and they're planning for their surrogate to carry a baby that's their partner's DNA, or however it's playing out, that they give themselves the
Yeah.
grace to know it's just give it time. You will be emotionally connected to this child the way that you dream of
Right.
being.
Totally.
That's because for me that's really important, a really important message to share because we can't know,
Yeah. Right.
right?
Yeah, and I think because we did that whole process really, I mean, everything about that was us together. Like we did every single step of that together. And I think because Tasha's TCC journey was literally like a month long in terms
Right.
of her like we weren't in it for like a whole bunch more time after that. And so like in some strange way, it felt like it was just like a continuation of my trying to conceive process in some strange way. And
Yeah.
like then Tasha was like the portal, of like of
Fair.
her coming to the coming Earth side. But yeah, but
Yeah.
yes, that's true. And that you will definitely feel like yours no matter what, for sure.
Yeah. That's and that's amazing because I mean that's all we dream about when we think about having kids is having that
Yeah.
connection with them, which is
Hmm.
just it's beautiful and it's you
Yeah,
can't you can't envision it. You hope it, but you can't really deeply know it until you experience it, which I always feel
right.
like it sounds so condescending when I say that in my classes when I'm teaching. I'm like, well, you just won't know what labor feels like until you're in labor, but you won't,
Yeah.
unfortunately. Just
Yeah.
like you won't know what it feels like to give birth or to have a needle or to have an eye infection. There's things in life you just won't know until you experience them, and some of them are good and some
Totally.
of them are bad.
Yeah.
But it's just a reality, and but knowing that that child is yours is huge.
Yeah.
I do you have like have you ever added it all up together to know how much you ended up having to spend to create the family you've got?
I mean, it had to, I know that we spent over $15,000 on sperm alone.
Yeah,
It had to have been well over, well over 20, at least 20,000 at least,
yeah,
because of all of the rounds. Even I mean, the natural rounds even were like, with the sperm and then the actual insemination was like almost 2,000,
yeah,
um, times 14 or whatever,
yeah,
or
yeah,
times 12. And then the two medicated ones were more than that,
yeah,
for like the trigger shot and the Comet and everything.
yeah,
So yeah, I mean, an insane amount of money. And
yeah.
it's like, and it didn't even stop there, because then like moving through the second parent adoption process was
Right.
another 2,000, because 400 for the social worker, 17 for the lawyer and the filing fees and everything.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, it's immense. And so it's like that's why it makes my blood boil when conservatives or Republicans or the society in general tells queer folks that we're not fit to be a parent. It's like, look, none of us are getting knocked up like a night of bad decisions. Like we put everything, every penny we've had, every 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 ounce of our cell of our body into making our families. And
mm,
we've put all time, energy, thought, determination, discussion, everything we've got into doing this. Like
yeah,
there's no stone unturned when planning a family. And so not only is no one getting pregnant by accident, but like no one's going through this process without putting everything that got into it. And
yeah,
so, and that's something that we have to do that straight folks just don't have to think about.
yeah.
Um, and having babies left and right, it feels like, especially when you're trying to get pregnant.
Oh, it feels like the whole world is pregnant when you're trying to get
No
pregnant,
thought
doesn't
at all. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
it?
yeah, yeah. I had some very strong feelings for every straight person getting pregnant while I was trying to get pregnant.
Yeah, oh, I'm
Very
sure.
strong
I'm
feelings.
sure. I'm sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
not uncommon.
yeah.
You did do the second parent adoption. My understanding is that, and from someone else I spoke to in Washington State, that both of you are on the birth certificate, and
Hmm.
that as a state, Washington accepts that as all you need, but that they doing the second parent adoption is really just in case things change. Is that what your understanding was, or did somebody say no, you
Well,
just need to do it?
no, well, that is that. Well, that's partly what the understanding is, but it was like it came up really around when the election started happening. Like, at first we are like, okay, I'm gonna wait till we have two and they'll adopt them together.
Right.
And then that didn't happen. And then elections started happening. And the reality was, again, like this fear of the unknown of like, yes, the reality is we had her when we're married. I'm on the birth certificate as the father, not the other parent, as father,
Yeah.
which is insane. And we live in Washington. So yes, technically I am seen as her actual legal parent. But the weird thing is too, though, like both our social worker and my lawyer kept saying, Morgan, you don't have to do this. You're already legal. You're legal, which is also like a really strange thing to hear.
Yeah.
I'm a legal mom because conversely, I'm illegal mom, which is like such an
Hmm.
insane thing to hear. So yes, but also like, friends would say like, hey, let's take our kids to the Greater Vancouver Zoo, which is like only like 34, 40 minutes from here. And my first thought should be, sweet, who wants to ride in my minivan? What are we packing for snacks? What day are we going? Whatever. But my first thought is, oh my God, like, okay, if I went to the Greater Vancouver Zoo without Tasha and Arlo broke her leg or we got in a car accident and we had to go to the hospital,
Hmm.
would I have access to her if Tasha wasn't with me?
Right.
And the reality is the answer to that question, and I could be yes,
Right.
but I'm not going to chance something like that. And in my mind, sure, yeah, we live in a blue state, yada, yada, yada. But like it didn't feel like what we already had in place was enough.
Right.
And certainly doesn't feel like it was going to be enough potentially sooner than later now. Or it's just like we were traveling and we were in an airport in like, I don't know, Mississippi or something, and like something
Yeah.
happened. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like the stress of that unknown, that dealing with like bias or barriers to accessing my kid, like we would all burn a place to the ground to have access to our kid. Like
100%.
Mama Bear is realness would ensue. Um, so we went through with the process because of that,
Right.
because I didn't feel confident that the former setup was enough. And luckily in our case, like, even though it's excruciating to have a social worker assess you in your own home, which just is, it's so invasive, asking me what I was doing between 2000 2007. Like, does anyone remember what they're doing during that time frame and how that has any impact on who I'm as a parent now? It
Yeah.
doesn't. Um, but we're lucky in that like that particular social worker isn't a straight but adoptive parents and think it was like insane that I would have to do this at all. And our lawyer was queer. So we had those two
Right.
things working in our favor. But the difference between like being in Bellingham and even in Seattle, like I know folks that did the second parent adoption process living in King County in Seattle, and they'd have to give like medical history, financial history, a note from your pediatrician, like in some states, the fire department assesses your home. In some states, you still have to adopt your kid, even if you did reciprocal IVF and it's like your egg. Like everywhere you go, there's different rules.
Yeah.
Different in different countries, there's different rules. Some non-bio parents can't be on the birth certificate even.
Yeah.
So, so again, it's like that makes it really challenging and stressful to just like depending where you live, you would have different access,
Yeah.
different like you know,
Yep.
rights. And really, the birth certificate is not a legally binding document. It's essentially a souvenir. And so it doesn't, yes, we have one, but it's not on its own enough to protect me legally.
Which is hard for a Canadian to hear because for us, it's a legally binding document, and that's
Uh,
that's all we need.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's disappointing that you aren't given that same grace.
I agree wholeheartedly with what you just said. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, going to Greater Vancouver, you probably would have been perfectly fine because we
yeah,
recognize birth certificates here as legal
yes,
documents. But you're right, you don't know from one
yeah,
place to the next. So why not dot all your I's and cross all your T's, as
right.
stupid as that may be that you had to do.
Yes,
But
so stupid. Blood boiling.
um,
Yep.
before I let you go and dash off on your on the early part of your day, I'm already headed into the
Right.
afternoon, but
Yeah.
tell me, what is your very favorite part of parenting Arlo?
Mm. Um, just like the little things, like she and I love being in the water. You know what I mean? Like we go to the pool on Tuesdays, it's pool and school days. We go to the pool before preschool. And, she loves, we both wear our goggles so we can look at each other and wave each other under the water or dive around. We're like a couple of otters. It's really kind of funny to watch. So just like having those like really specific bonds with her, going to like music festivals and like just little things like when I pull up in the driveway and I could see she's been waiting for me. She's like in the window watching and waiting, and then she waves at me, and then she comes booking out. Sometimes like no clothes
Oh,
on, it's like books out of the driveway and jumps in my lap in the car. Just like those little moments, right? Just
yeah.
like teaching her how to be confident, encouraging her. being so self-actualized and teaching her to take up space and use her voice and like try things, sure, that looks risky, but let's try it. Like, let's try balancing on that thing, or like, let's try climbing on that rock. Just like really instilling in her a level of confidence to like move through the world.
Yeah.
Um, those are some of my favorite things, just like being her sort of teacher.
I love that. That's pretty
Yeah.
amazing. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today and sharing your story and your journey. Can you tell people quickly where they can find you on social or on your website so that, and I'll put it in the show notes as well.
Yeah. So you can mostly find me on Instagram. And I offer 1 to 2 support coaching. I have lots of cool like digital tools, including like a 2-week wait advent calendar that I really love. I'm actually doing June 22nd, I'm doing in-person retreat for queer folks who are parents to be, and just by like honoring and like deep self-care and celebration and just like sweetness and fun and like visioning. I also have a course for birth workers to help them be a true ally and use inclusive language properly and show up and be like the queer ally that we're all looking for. So I have a course for birth workers as well. So just again, using my own lived experience to like help educate and like build like a bigger safety net for queer families in these different ways. So yeah, Instagram is where you can find me, and I'm available both in person and virtually so that I can reach as many people as possible.
Love it. Perfect. Thank you so much. As a queer individual with colonial lineage, I want to first acknowledge the land upon which I live and work. Being from what is now known as Burlington, Ontario, I recognize the original ancestry of these lands as they span from Lake Ontario to the Niagara Escarpment and beyond. These lands are steeped in Indigenous history that benefits my community every day. The territory is mutually covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Iroquois Confederacy, the Ojibwe, and other allied nations to peaceably share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. I would like to acknowledge that the land on which I stand is part of the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit. The land dictates everything about our ways of being. Particularly, the land teaches us about fluidity. Concepts of the binary system and heteropatriarchy were imposed by the colonials who were, at the same time, removing children from their homes, families, and all that was familiar to them. These same children were divided by the only 2 prescribed binaries recognized by the settlers, and they were forced to conform to a performative, gendered falsehood. The land doesn't operate under binary thinking. It is diverse, complex, and unpredictable at times. Rather, the land holds us and all of our remarkable paths and identities. Every organism and spirit has a purpose. It is from this understanding that I strive to live and grow. Thank you for joining me today on the Becoming Baby Ready podcast. If you have a story that you'd like to share, or you know someone who might, if you're a professional who works in the capacity of helping people start and grow their families, and you identify as being a part of the 2S LGBTQIA plus community yourself, then please don't hesitate to reach out. We always have room for more stories to share, and there's always more learning to do.